All right, today we're cracking open the official rulebook for one of the most popular frameworks out there for tackling complex work, the Scrum Guide. Now, you might think a guide sounds complicated, but this thing is surprisingly simple for a seriously powerful way of working. So, yeah, let's just dive right in.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever been on a project where the goalposts just keep moving, right? You're trying to build something, but then boom, the market shifts, or some new tech comes out of nowhere, or, your stakeholders just change their minds. In the world we live in now, that's not the exception, that's pretty much the rule. So the big question is, how on earth do you make progress when you can't predict what's going to happen next week?
Well, that exact problem, that's what Scrum was built for. And the official definition right here. It might look simple, but it's packed with meaning. You gotta focus on these keywords: lightweight, adaptive, and complex. This isn't some big, heavy, rigid process. Not at all. It's meant to be a minimal framework, just enough to help you navigate all that uncertainty and actually deliver real value instead of just, blindly following a plan that's already out of date.
And if you boil it all down, this is basically how it works. It's just a simple loop. Step 1, figure out what to do. Step 2, do a small piece of it. Step 3, look at what you just did and learn something from it. And step 4, you just repeat. That's it. This rhythm, this cycle of planning, doing, and learning, that is the engine that makes Scrum go.
Okay, so that's the what. But to really get Scrum, really get it, you've got to understand the philosophy, the why behind it all. See, it's way more than just a checklist of steps. It's a whole different way of thinking about work. It's all about digging into the why that makes these rules so powerful.
And at the very heart of Scrum is this one big idea: empiricism. Yeah, it's a fancy word, I know, but the concept is super simple. You learn by doing. That's it. So instead of pretending we've got a crystal ball and can plan everything perfectly from the start, Scrum just says, hey, let's make our decisions based on what we can actually see and what we've actually experienced, not just on guesswork. So this whole idea of empiricism, it stands on 3 core pillars. And you really can think of them like the legs of a stool. If you kick one of them out, the whole thing just tips over. For Scrum to actually work, you need all 3 of these pillars working together in perfect harmony. So let's break them down. First up is transparency. And this is huge. It just means that everyone, and I mean everyone, the team, the stakeholders, everybody, has a clear, shared view of what's going on. What's the work? What's the progress? The guide puts it perfectly, right? Trying to inspect something that isn't transparent is, well, it's misleading and a total waste of time. You could even end up making things worse. And that transparency is what makes the next 2 pillars possible. First, you inspect. You're constantly looking at the work, at your process, at how things are going. And then, based on what you see, what you learn from that inspection, you adapt. You make a change. You adjust your course. In fact, every single event in Scrum is basically a built-in opportunity to inspect and adapt. It's designed to let the team pivot the second they learn something new. Okay, so we've got the philosophy, but who are the people actually playing this game? Well, that brings us to the Scrum team. And this is not your traditional top-down hierarchical group. No way. It's structured in a very, very specific way for a reason. So the basic building block here is the Scrum team. And it's small on purpose. We're talking 10 people or fewer. This keeps them nimble. They're also cross-functional, which just means the team has all the skills it needs to get the job done without having to constantly wait for help from the outside. And this one is crucial. They are self-managing. The team itself gets to decide who does what, when they do it, and how they do it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Scrum throws out traditional job titles like tester or designer or project manager. Instead, it gives us just 3 specific accountabilities. First, you've got the product owner. Their whole job is to maximize the value of what the team builds. They basically own the what. Then you have the developers. These are the folks who are actually building a usable product, what we call an increment, every single sprint. They own the how. And finally, there's the Scrum Master. Think of them as a coach. They're accountable for making sure the team is effective and that everyone understands Scrum. What's so brilliant about this is how it creates this perfect balance of power. You get this healthy tension between focusing on value, getting things done, and making sure the process works. All right, so we've got the philosophy, we've got the players. Now let's talk about the game itself, the actual flow. And the central rhythm, the heartbeat of Scrum, is something called the sprint. Yeah, the sprint really is the heartbeat. It's a short, consistent cycle. It's always the same length, 1 month or less. And in that time, the team's whole focus is turning ideas into actual, tangible value. And there's no downtime. As soon as one sprint ends, boom, the next one kicks off right away.
This fixed length is what gives the team that steady, reliable rhythm for, you guessed it, inspecting and adapting. So, packed inside every single sprint are 4 other key events. It all kicks off with sprint planning. That's where you figure out what you're going to accomplish. Then, every single day, you've got the daily scrum, a quick sync up. At the very end of the sprint, you've got the sprint review, where you show off what you built. And then, to wrap it all up, you have the sprint retrospective, where you look back at how you worked together. And then you start the whole cycle over again. And that sprint planning meeting, it starts with a really important question. It's not what tasks are we going to do? No. The first question is, why is this sprint valuable? The whole team works together to create a sprint goal. This isn't just a list of work, it's a shared objective, a purpose. It gets everyone focused on achieving an outcome, not just checking off a list of tasks.
And what about that daily scrum? Okay, let's be super clear here. This is not a status meeting for some manager. It's a quick 15-minute planning session for the developers, by the developers. It's their time to check in on their progress towards that sprint goal and tweak their plan for the next 24 hours. It's designed to be fast, focused, and super effective.
Okay, so we have the rules of the game, we have the rhythm, but what are the actual game pieces? The things you can see and touch. Well, Scrum gives us 3 key artifacts, and their whole purpose is to make the work and the goals, transparent. First up is the product backlog. The easiest way to think about this is like the single master to-do list for the entire product. But, a to-do list without a destination is just a bunch of noise. That's why the backlog has a commitment, the product goal. The goal is the big why, the future state you're aiming for. The backlog, that's just the roadmap for how you're planning to get there, and that map can change along the way. All right, so from that big product backlog, the developers pull work for the sprint, and that creates the sprint backlog. This is their detailed game plan just for this one cycle. And its commitment is that sprint goal we just talked about. It's that one single objective for this sprint. It's what gives the team focus and a real reason to collaborate. And finally, what's the actual result of all this work? It's called the increment. This is a real, concrete, usable stepping stone towards the product goal. It's not just code, it's a working piece of the product. And to make sure everyone agrees on what working means, every increment has a commitment, the definition of done. This is just a formal, shared understanding of quality. It's the checklist that tells everyone, yep, this is truly complete, and it kills all those, it's done, but conversations. So there you have it. We've gone through the theory, the team, the events, and the artifacts. We've basically laid out all the rules of the game. But how do you actually play it? And honestly, this might be the most brilliant part of the whole thing. The Scrum Guide is purposefully incomplete. It doesn't give you a detailed instruction manual for every little thing. It gives you the essential rules, the boundaries of the playing field, and then it trusts the intelligence of the people who are actually doing the work to figure out the best way to play the game in their own unique situation. And that really brings us to the final takeaway here. Scrum is a framework. It's not a rigid methodology. It gives you the rules of the game. It gives you the scoreboard. It sets everything up so that you have constant opportunities to inspect, to adopt, and hopefully to win. So Scrum gives you the rules. The real question is, how are you going to play the game?